This morning we're beginning a new sermon series, and here's the title. It's called Greed and Giving. And before we jump into this series, I want to talk about why I wanted to do a series like this morning, or this next 5 weeks actually. And I wanted to just share a real story with us. One of our values here at Thrive is to be real. And so I wanted to just be very real with us for a minute and share just a personal story. Back in October, or it was either October or November, it was right around the time that myself and the elders were trying to determine the church budget for Thrive for 2022. It was right around that time. And I was actually lying in bed with Emma. And if you've been married for any amount of time, you know that we're about to go to bed, and that's not a time to start a conversation. But as I'm lying in bed there, I turn to Emma and I say, man, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated about trying to figure out our church budget. And I told her, because every year since I've become the lead pastor here, we've continually fallen short of our church budget. And that has meant that every year I'm trying to figure out, either throughout the year or at the end of the year, what we need to cut or how we're gonna cut down on our church budget. And as I'm sharing this, and I was just sharing with her, man, I'm frustrated, and here's why. Because the church budget, it's not just about paying for the lights and the building, but the church budget, it's really about God's mission. It's about how we can use the money to reach the lost, to make disciples. And every year it's trying to figure out how are we cutting back on this? And this last year we had to actually cut a third of our missions budget. And so I'm laying in bed, I'm telling him, man, I'm just frustrated. And I say to her, man, when is this ever going to end? Are we ever going to come to a year where we're not making cuts? When are we going to excel in this area of giving? And this is Emma's response to me. As I'm saying this, she says to me, well, it'll end when you start teaching about it. When you start teaching about giving and finances. And she says, I haven't heard you talk about that much from up front, about giving, about money in the last couple of years. And while I don't think that one sermon series is going to fix our hearts, I do think it's a starting point. And I hesitate in even sharing that story, because I don't want us to walk out of here this morning thinking, oh, we're just doing this sermon series because Jory wants us to make the budget. Well, of course I want us to make our budget. And I bet looking out that all of you guys want that too. But as I was preparing for this series, there is something that Paul wrote to the church of Corinth that really hit me personally, and as your guys' pastor, that I wanted to share with us this morning as well, as we're talking about why we're doing a series called Greed and Giving, because it goes much deeper than just making our budget. Look at what Paul writes to the church in Corinth in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 7. He says, but as you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in all earnestness, and in our love for you, see that you excel in this act of grace also. I love what Paul is writing to the church. He says, you guys are excelling in all these things: faith, speech, knowledge, earnestness, your love. Just as you excel in all of these areas, I want you guys to also excel in the area of giving, this act of grace. That's what he's talking about here. And as I read that, I thought, and I just started to look at my own life and think, yes, that's what I want for my life. That is what I want for us as a church, that we could excel in this area of giving. And I have to be honest, as I was just reflecting on my own heart, in the area of giving, it's not always good. Sometimes it's just a check mark. And I don't know what you guys are or what you guys want for your life. I would ask you the same question. Do you want to excel in this area of giving? Do you want the church to excel in this area, just as we excel in all these other areas? Faith, speech, knowledge, earnestness, love. I want us to know, as we're going through this sermon series called Greed and Giving, and just as any other sermon series, as I'm preaching to us on these topics, I'm preaching to myself as well. And I probably can't share that enough in other areas that we go through that I talk about each week up front as well. And so, why are we doing this series called Greed and Giving? Well, of course, I want us to reach the budget that we've approved. I'd love to see us go above and beyond that. But more so, I want to excel in this area in my life, and I want us to excel in it as a church. As Paul writes here, that we'd excel in all areas. And I didn't, as I say those things, I didn't talk a lot about greed, but in the short of it, I also feel conviction to just share with us the dangers of greed as well. There are some serious warnings about it that we're going to look at. And so you guys know, in the upcoming weeks, we're going to take 5 weeks. We're going to take 2 weeks talking about greed. We're going to take 2 weeks talking about being generous givers. And then the last week of the series, we're going to do a week on tithing. So I'm excited for these weeks and what we have to come in front of us.